Welcome back to Megaman X2. And now with only one Maverick left to go and one more Maverick Hunter, we're moving on to Overdrive Ostrich. Eventually. There we go. I think I was a little bit distracted during this recording, and so I didn't hit the button right away. I got super lucky that Violin decided to go over to this stage, because otherwise I would have been completely boned on getting the last part for zero. And thankfully too, the X-Hunter door is actually right over here. You have to have defeated Wheelgator and gotten his weapon. Because if you break through here, this is where the doorway is for the X-Hunter, depending on who's here. And thankfully, Violin is here. I shall crush you like a tin can. Alright then. As far as I can tell, he is still weak mainly to the Crystal Hunter, depending on the room that he's in, but he also is kind of weak to the Bubble Splash. Attack-wise, I think Violin is probably the hardest of the three. Because in terms of damage, I still say Surges is probably the hardest of the three to fight because his pattern is so random. But if you just stand right next to him, his Wrecking Ball on his shoulder will normally miss you 90% of the time, and you just spam the Bubble Splash, and then he goes down like a chump. But there we go. You have all three parts of Zero, and we are en route for the good ending. Thank God, because I was really hoping I was going to be able to show that off. Maybe I'll show off the bad ending, but it's really not that big of a deal. Like I said before, all it does is it gives you an extra boss fight. Okay, now that I have all three, I can spoil it. If you don't get all three parts for Zero, then you do fight Zero before you fight Sigma. Because, spoiler warning, Sigma is the final boss again, and that's not really a major spoiler right now, because the X-Hunters flat out admitted that Sigma was a thing. So, okay then. Again, a lot of these empty rooms require you to have the X-Buster upgrade, which I unfortunately did not get yet, because I tried to get the upgrade in Wheelgator's stage, but it's really hard to get it without the leg upgrade. Thankfully, the leg upgrade is in Overdrive Ostrich's stage, so we will be getting it. If you blow up this sand dispenser thing, it almost always gives you an extra life and large life energy. Now, to get the heart tank here, I screwed that up badly. In order to get the heart tank for the stage, you need to have the ride bike intact while you're going up this hill, which is actually a lot harder than it looks. You can backtrack and get it back, but after a while, you're going to get to a spot where the screen scrolls too far and you can't backtrack, so you only get one shot at getting this, which is why when I was doing this, I was a little bit hesitant on getting the timing right. There we go. Boom. There we go. There we go. So if you jump up this way, and then if you get the heart tank, and I died. You actually can survive that. You just have to turn a few seconds before you get to where the heart tank is, and then you can speed on back. But that's okay. The important thing is I got the heart tank. That's one of the harder ones to get, because if you mess up on it, you have to play through the entire stage a second time. Unless you have the X-Buster upgrade and the Speed Burner, which actually I'm about to get the... Well, no, not the... No. Coming in here, we finally get the leg upgrade. Which is why even if I went in weakness order, I still would have had to backtrack to this level anyway, because I would have needed to come back after Wheelgator. But now we have the leg upgrade, which, like the first game, gives you the ability to dash, but the upgraded version for this game also gives you an air dash, as the game is going to demonstrate in about 2 seconds here. So you have jump, and then you can dash mid-air. That is the easiest way. And now I can easily get the armor piece that's in Wheelgator's stage that I missed earlier. So you were intended to have the leg upgrade first. There is a chance you can get the Buster upgrade without the leg upgrade. It's just really hard to get the timing right. And here we get the coolest entrance to a boss room ever. We get to blow the shit out of a giant missile. And then we also get to fight Overdrive Ostrich outside, which is one of the few times, even in the X series, where this happens. Now, Overdrive Ostrich is weak to Crystal Hunter, which for some reason freezes him. I don't understand that, but that locks him into a loop where every time you hit him, he's going to jump up and use his powered-up Sonic Slicer. But if you get him into a nice loop, you can actually hit him on his jump up before he launches his attack, and then you can get him into a stun loop. I was unfortunately not able to do that. The powered-up version of the Crystal Hunter allows you to slow down time like Crystal Snail did, which also helps in fighting Overdrive Ostrich a little bit. But he's not too hard, which is why a lot of people take him on first or second, because even with just the regular Buster, he's pretty simple to beat. But that's the last of the Mavericks, and I thankfully was able to get all 3 parts of Zero, so I am en route for the good ending, as I mentioned earlier. Here we have the Sonic Slicer. What the game doesn't show is that if you use the Sonic Slicer, it'll ricochet off walls as well. The difference point. So since we actually got all 3 parts of Zero, we have the triumphant music and Dr. Kane telling us that the X-Hunters base is in the North Pole. If we have the bad ending, then the music would be different, and Dr. Kane would mention that one of the X-Hunters broke into the lab and stole all of Zero's parts, as well as his control chip. Thankfully, since we have all 3 parts, they don't break in and steal the control chip. But it's still going to take time for Dr. Kane to rebuild Zero, so we get to go and fight the X-Hunters without Zero's help at this point. But before we do that... Oh, I'm doing things a little slower. So yeah, looks like this... So yeah, there we go. So there's the X-Hunter stages. But before we do that, there's some backtracking that needs to be done. Now that I have the leg upgrades, I can go back and get a whole bunch of stuff. With the powered-up Speed Burner and the Air Dash, you come up here in Magna Centipede stage to get a heart container. If you power up the Bubble Splash in Bubble Crab stage, which is actually a lot harder to... and use it, you actually get a higher jump, which I was having a really hard... you can actually jump on top of the water. Once you're outside of the water, you can actually bounce on top of the water. But I was having the hardest time getting the jump up getting the jump properly here, which was weird. There we go. And now finally backtracking back to Flame Stag stage. There, that's what you were supposed to do the first time. If you jump on the top part of that beetle and just keep jumping up, then you can go up to the top left here, and that's where the final sub-tank is. So there, I have all 8 heart tanks, all 4 sub-tanks. Now it's time to go to the X-Hunter stage, which has... Sorry, I love the guitar riff in the beginning of this song, but this is the X-Hunter stage. Back when I was a kid, this stage used to be the bane of my existence when I rented this, because I never really owned this for a long time. My aunt and uncle managed to get a copy of it for me a long time afterwards. Back when this... Because X2 and X3 were really, really expensive. Oh, also, hope you remembered that gimmick from the intro stage with the wall, with the Maverick that crushes you with the walls here, because that's back. Unless you decide to cheese it using the silk shot and destroying the robot and destroying it before it gets the chance to move the walls here. But as I was saying, because this game used an upgraded version of the Super FX chip, that also made this game really expensive and hard to find. It's slightly more expensive than an average Super Nintendo cart. But I did have a copy. But I do have a Super Nintendo copy. I unfortunately was never able to find Megaman X3 because by the time X3 came around, the PlayStation was really, really popular at that point, and yeah, so it kind of just a lot of people didn't get a chance to play X3. There. If you use the explosion off of this charged up silk shot, you can destroy that robot before he even gets a chance to close the wall on you. Sorry, I'm too distracted by this music. I don't know what it is about the castle stages in Mega Man, but the first theme is usually always the best of the main final castle stages. This stage does split off into different pathways. As you can see that there's a bottom path. If you take the bottom path, then you have to climb up a lot of those missiles. So that's technically the harder path. So now we're going to go off and we are going to be fighting Violin again. This is why a lot of people just refuse to... This is why a lot of people tend to just skip the X-Hunters when they're going for Zero's parts, because you're going to have to fight the X-Hunters again anyway. Here's... The weird thing is that Surges and Agile basically get an upgrade. Violin apparently was supposed to get an upgrade that they just didn't get around to doing. I beat him too quickly. What? How could he have overloaded my circuits? Arrgh! Anyway, I beat him too quickly before he was able to actually do any of his moves. The two blocks that he makes in his room will constantly change where their position is, which allows you to grab onto the sides of them and use them as a smaller wall to block Violin's giant mace. And apparently, Violin was supposed to get a second mace on his other shoulder to make the battle a little bit harder, so you had to worry about dodging two of them at the same time. I'm using my hands, and you guys aren't watching me, so what's the point? But, thing is, apparently I guess they were rushed towards the end of this game's development, so Violin didn't get an extra upgrade. But, oh well. He's still the weakest of the three. Actually, no, I still say Surges is going to be the next one we're going after in this stage. And I still say Surges is the hardest one, is the easiest of the three. No, actually, I would say Surges is the easier one, because I used to think that Violin was the hardest. Now that I know how Violin works, being weak to the bubble splash, he's a lot easier for me. But now we got these missiles again. I say again, but we very rarely had them. If you don't have the leg upgrade, then you have to... Yeah, if you didn't get the air dash, then you'd have to grab onto the side of that missile and just keep wall jumping off of it until it gets over to here, and then you can jump off of it. But since I got the dash upgrade, I can just dash jump. Now, you are supposed to cling onto the side of the missile here to avoid these flamethrowers, but I just take the hits because I don't want to risk, jumping into the spikes. That is the other use of the Crystal Hunter, is that you can freeze enemies in place and use them as platforms. If you jump over to the far right there's actually an extra life, but it's really, really hard to get over there. It involves you having to use an air dash combined with the charged up speed burner both times, and I'm not going to risk that. But for now, this is why we wanted to get the armor, because it's the one and only time where the Giga Attack actually is very useful. As long as I don't screw this up. And here's Surge's. Dr. Wily, is that you? Nah. Now, there's supposedly a rumor that, because there's apparently a manga version of this game, and welp. That happened. Yeah, what you're supposed to be able to do is stand on the corner of that to avoid Surge's attacks, but apparently the platform pushed me into the spikes. Ugh. Upside is I get to show how you're supposed to fight him without the Giga Attack. I guess. Ugh. Anyway, what I was trying to say was there is a non-canon manga of Megaman X2 that states that Surgus is a roboticized version of Dr. Wily. Now, I don't know if this is just the non-canon manga, or if that was originally how the story that Inafune wanted to go with was going to go, until X6 happened, where they screw up everything. I don't know. Personally, I don't see it, and just because he's an old man in, like, this weird little mech machine here, people like to think that he is a roboticized Dr. Wily. And you know what? More power to you. If you want to think that he's Dr. Wily, go ahead. That's perfectly fine. Maybe it's up to interpretation. Maybe they weren't supposed to be, you know, maybe they were doing a very vague mention of it. Also, apparently in the Japanese version, Surgus mentions that he's defeated by the roboticized creation of Light, and everyone seems to think he's talking about Dr. Light. Although I don't think that's I think that's a rough translation of what he actually does say, but that's another story. If you want to think that Surgus is a roboticized Dr. Wily, go ahead. I don't really care. He can be one. He can be a roboticized Dr. Wily, or he can just be some random old robot guy. Whatever. Anyway, join me for the next part, which is going to be the final part of Megaman X2, where we take on Agile and finish this game. See you guys then.